Hey, my name is Jonah Reed. I'm 33 years old, and I teach high school history in a small town called Linden, where I grew up and never left. I'll tell you the ending first, because it's the only part anybody ever believes. I went to my younger brother's wedding alone. I left it engaged to a woman I had met 90 minutes earlier and whose last name I didn't yet know. That's the truth. It took us another full year to make that engagement real, but the night it began, neither of us expected a single moment of it. Let me back up. I've spent my whole life in Linden. I teach in the same building I graduated from, in a classroom, 2 doors down from where I once fell asleep during a lecture on the Roman aqueducts. My students think it's funny that I never escaped. I tell them I never wanted to. The town raised me. You don't run from the thing that raised you. I was raised mostly by my grandmother. My parents both worked long hours when I was small, and it was Nana's house I came home to every afternoon. Nana, with her flour-dusted apron and her radio playing big band music, and her absolute refusal to let anyone in her presence feel small. She'd been a girl during hard years, and she'd learned something in them that she spent the rest of her life trying to teach me. Jonah, she used to say, any fool can be charming to the prettiest girl at the dance. You watch the man who walks across the whole room to ask the one nobody else will. That's the only kind of man worth being. The measure of a person is how they treat the one nobody's dancing with. She said it so many times it stopped meaning anything to me, the way the most important things often do when you hear them young. Then she got sick, the year I turned 31, and I moved back into her house to look after her. My girlfriend at the time, we'd been together 4 years, and everyone assumed I'd marry her, wanted to move to the city. She'd gotten an offer there. She asked me to come. I couldn't. Nana had 18 months left, the doctors thought, and I wasn't going to spend them 4 hours away. So my girlfriend went, and I stayed, and that was the end of that. People in town were kind about it in the way that's worse than unkind. The soft looks, the lowered voices. Poor Jonah gave up everything for his grandmother. Now look at him, all alone. Nana passed the following spring, and about a year after that, my younger brother Mark got married. I was happy for him. I want that on the record before I tell you the rest. Mark's a good man and Sarah's a good woman, and they deserved every bit of their happiness. But a family wedding is a hard place to be the older brother who gave up his own shot at it. My mother meant nothing by it, I'm sure, but she spent the whole rehearsal dinner introducing me to Sarah's single cousins with a brightness that made my skin crawl. An uncle clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Your turn next, eh, Jonah?" with the careful, pitying smile of a man glad it wasn't his problem. At the reception, they sat me at the back table. Every wedding has one. The leftover table, farthest from the dance floor, where they put the odd numbers, and the people who don't quite fit the seating chart. I knew exactly what it meant that I was at it. The single older brother, slotted out of the way. I took my seat without complaint and reached for the wine, and that's when I noticed the woman across from me. She was the only other person at the table, not talking to anyone. Dark hair pinned up, a deep green dress, sitting very straight, with her hands folded in her lap, like she was holding herself together by posture alone. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the dress. The kind of beautiful that comes from a face that's decided not to let anyone see. It's been crying. She caught me looking and lifted her chin a fraction, daring me to say something pitying. "Back table," I said instead, raising my glass an inch. We must have done something to deserve it. The corner of her mouth moved. "I think the back tables, where they put the people they're afraid, will cause a scene." "And which one are you?" "The one they're afraid will cry," she said. "You?" "The one they're afraid won't ever find a wife," I said. "My mother's been apologizing for me all weekend." She laughed then, a real one, surprised out of her, and put her hand over her mouth like she'd forgotten she was allowed to. "Then we're well matched," she said. "I'm Maren, Jonah, bride or groom. Bride, Sarah's my cousin." Her smile faded a little. I almost didn't come. I was about to ask why, but I didn't have to, because that was the moment the trouble walked over. He was a tall man in an expensive suit, a glass of something brown in his hand, a woman in a red dress on his arm. He came straight to our table with the loose, easy confidence of a man who has never once been the one nobody's dancing with. He stopped behind Marin's chair and looked down at her, and the temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. "Marin," he said, "I wasn't sure you'd show. Brave of you." He glanced at the woman beside him, then back down. "You remember Chloe?" I watched Marin's spine go rigid. "Daniel," she said, very evenly. "Congratulations on the engagement. Sarah mentioned it." "We figured it was time," Daniel said, swirling his glass. "When you know, you know." He let that sit, a small cruelty, and then he twisted it. "No date tonight. I thought you'd have moved on by now. Been, what, almost a year?" He smiled like he was being kind. "I hope you're not still. She has a date," I said. I don't entirely know what made me do it. I'd known Marin for 9 minutes. But I heard Nana as clearly as if she were standing behind my own chair. "You watch the man who walks across the whole room." And I was already standing up and moving around the table, and my hand was on the back of Marin's chair, and the words were out before I decided to say them. "She's with me." I looked at Daniel and put every quiet thing I had into it. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. I'm Jonah, Marin's fiancé." The table went silent. Marin went absolutely still beside me. Daniel's smile flickered. "Fiancé," he repeated. Marin didn't mention. "We're keeping it quiet," I said. "We didn't want to take anything away from Sarah's day. You understand." I let my hand rest on Marin's shoulder, light, asking permission with the gesture, ready to drop it the second she pulled away. She didn't pull away. After a moment, I felt her reach up and lay her hand over mine, cool and trembling, and press down once. "Yes, of course," Daniel said, his charm gone a little brittle. "Well, congratulations to you both then." He steered Chloe away toward the dance floor, and he didn't look back, and Marin let out a breath she'd clearly been holding since he walked up. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "I know. He's my ex, obviously." She was still holding my hand on her shoulder, like she'd forgotten it was a performance. "We were supposed to get married last fall. He left in July. He's marrying her in the spring." She closed her eyes. "Psst. And my whole family thinks I'm the one who fell apart. And I let them dance at this wedding and watch me sit alone at the back table and feel sorry for me, and I was about to get up and leave, and then a complete stranger called himself my fiancé." "You can drop it whenever you want," I said. "Just say the word, and I'll have been a confused man at the wrong table. No harm done." She opened her eyes and looked at me. "Or," she said slowly, "you could ask me to dance, since you're my fiancé and all." So I did. I'm not a good dancer. I want to be clear about that. But I walked Marin Cole all the way across that reception hall, past the table of cousins my mother had wanted me to meet, past Daniel and Chloe, to the very center of the floor, and I put a hand at her back, and we moved slowly to something old and sweet, and for the length of one song, the woman everyone had come to pity was the most luminous person in the room. I could feel the whole wedding watching. I didn't care. Neither, it turned out, did she. "Tell me something true," she said, her head near my shoulder. "If you're going to be my fiancé, I should know one true thing about you." "My grandmother used to say the measure of a person is how they treat the one nobody's dancing with," I said. "She died last spring. I've been trying to be the man she thought I was ever since, and mostly failing." I turned us slowly. "You?" Marin was quiet a moment. Then she said, "Here's a true thing nobody at this wedding knows. I didn't fall apart when Daniel left." She pulled back just enough to look at me. "I left him 3 weeks before the wedding. I found out he'd been seeing Chloe for a year, and I found out some other things too. About money, about who he really was when the charm wore off. So I ended it." Her jaw tightened. "But his mother is dying. Cancer. And she loves me, and she didn't know what he'd done, and if I'd told the truth, it would have shattered her in the last month she has. So I let everyone believe he left me. I took the whole town, thinking I'm the sad, dumped woman who couldn't keep a man, because the truth would have hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Stop dancing." I just stood there in the middle of the floor and looked at her. "You let an entire room pity you," I said, "to protect a dying woman who isn't even your family anymore." "She was going to be," Marin said simply. "That doesn't stop mattering just 'cause he's a liar." And right there, with the band still playing, and my brother's wedding spinning around us, I understood that I hadn't rescued anybody. I'd walked across a room and put my hand on the chair of the bravest person at the wedding and called it a rescue, when really she'd been carrying something heavier than the whole crowd combined and doing it with her chin up. Nana would have loved her. Nana would have known her on sight. "Marin," I said, "can I take you to dinner? A real one. Not a wedding. Not a performance. Me asking you, because I'd like to keep talking to you for longer than one song." She studied me for a long moment, the way you study a coin to see if it's real. "You already told my ex we're engaged," she said. "Dinner seems like a step backward." "I'm a slow mover," I said. "I like to do things out of order." She smiled fully. This time, no hand over her mouth. "Dinner," she said. "Yes." We left the wedding together that night. Not engaged, not really, not yet. But I walked her to her car, and we stood in the parking lot under the string lights for an hour. And when she finally drove off, my mother hurried over with 100 questions and a hope in her eyes I hadn't seen pointed at me in 2 years. I told her the truth, more or less. I'd met someone at the back table. I didn't mention the fiancé part. Some things you keep quiet so as not to take anything away from somebody else's day. The trouble was, plenty of other people hadn't kept quiet. By Tuesday, half of Linden had heard that Jonah Reed had announced an engagement at his brother's wedding to a woman nobody had ever met. The story grew with every telling. By the time it reached the teacher's lounge, I'd apparently proposed during the toast, on one knee, with a ring I'd been carrying for months. A student asked me about it before first period. The cashier at the market congratulated me. My mother called 3 times. I phoned Marin that night, mortified. "So," I said, "small problem. The entire town thinks we're getting married." There was a pause, and then she started to laugh. That real surprised laugh I was already learning to listen for. "My library board chairman asked me about my engagement this afternoon," she said. I told him it was very recent. "You didn't deny it, Jonah," she said. "For the first time in a year, the story going around about me isn't poor Marin, the one who got left. It's Marin, the one who's marrying that nice history teacher from Linden." Her voice softened. "Do you have any idea how much lighter I felt walking through the grocery store today? I'm not in a hurry to correct it. Are you?" I sat in Nana's kitchen with the phone against my ear and looked at the empty chair where she used to sit. "No," I said. "I'm not in any hurry at all. Our real first date was that Friday. I drove the half hour to her town and took her to a small Italian place with checkered tablecloths, and I was more nervous than I'd been since I was 16, because this time there was no cruel ex to perform for and no role to hide behind. It was just me asking a remarkable woman to let me know her, with nothing to recommend me but the truth. "I have to ask you something," she said over dinner, "and you have to answer honestly. That night, when you stood up, were you doing it to be kind? Because if this is a man rescuing a sad woman from her ex, I'd rather know now. I've had enough of being someone's good deed." "It wasn't kindness," I said. "Or it started as kindness for about 4 seconds. And then you put your hand over mine and pressed down once, and I thought, I want to know everything about whoever this is. I didn't stand up to rescue you, Marin. I stood up, and then I couldn't sit back down." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached across the checkered tablecloth and pressed her hand over mine, once, the same as she had at the wedding. "Okay," she said, "then let's keep going." What followed was the slowest, surest year of my life. We were careful with each other, the way 2 people are when they've both been burned and learned the cost of moving fast. Marin lived a town over. She worked at the county library, and she made the best of everyone around her without ever once raising her voice. I'd drive over on Friday evenings, and we'd cook in her small kitchen and talk until the windows fogged. I told her about Nana, about the 18 months, about the city offer I'd turned down. She told me about the wedding she'd canceled, about the grief of mourning a marriage that everyone thought had mourned her. We weren't fixing each other. We were just 2 people who'd each chosen the hard, decent road and were relieved, finally, to find someone walking it too. A few months in, I brought her to Nana's house. My house now, though I still couldn't think of it that way. I showed her the kitchen with the radio that still worked, the chair nobody sat in, the photographs on the wall of a woman with a flour-dusted apron and sharp, laughing eyes. Marin walked through it slowly, the way you walk through a place that mattered to someone you're starting to love. She raised you, Marin said, stopping at a photo of Nana and a gap-toothed boy of 7. She did. Tell me she'd have liked you. She'd have interrogated me at that kitchen table, Marin said, and decided in about 4 minutes whether I was good enough for you. She turned to me. What's the verdict, do you think? I thought about it honestly. She'd have skipped the 4 minutes, I said. She'd have known the second you walked in. She always knew the good ones on sight. That was her whole gift. I switched on the old radio, and the big band music filled the kitchen the way it had my whole childhood, and I held out my hand. She also believed in dancing in the kitchen. Wasted floors are a sin, she used to say. We danced in Nana's kitchen until the song ended, and it was nothing like the wedding. No audience, no performance, no cruel man to face down. Just the two of us and an old radio and a chair that finally didn't look so empty. It wasn't all easy. There was a night, late in the summer, when Marin got quiet over dinner, and I could see the old story creeping back in behind her eyes. Finally, she set down her fork. What if I'm only with you, because you're the first kind thing that happened after Daniel, she said. What if I'm still just the dumped woman, and you're just the rebound, and I'm too broken to tell the difference? Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Everyone back home still looks at me like I'm something that got returned. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm leftover and you're settling, and neither of us can see it yet. I didn't rush to argue. I'd learned not to talk a person's fear smaller before they'd finished saying it. My grandmother had a thing she said. I told her when she was done. About the back table. She said the world puts people there because it's decided what they're worth. And the world is wrong about almost everyone it does that to. You didn't end up at that table because you're left over, Marin. You ended up there because the one time it counted, you chose somebody else's peace over your own pride. That's not a flaw I'm overlooking. That's the whole reason I crossed the room. She was quiet for a long time. I keep waiting to find out you're too good to be true, she said. I'm not, I said. I'm a slightly below average dancer who teaches kids about aqueducts and turned down a city he was scared of leaving. But I know exactly what you're worth, and it isn't a back table. I took her hand. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to keep checking. She didn't after that. Not as much. The old story got quieter every month, until one day I realized she'd stopped telling it about herself entirely. But the moment I stopped wondering and started being certain came later, and it came at the worst possible place. In the spring, Daniel married Chloe. Marin wasn't invited and didn't want to be. But Daniel's mother, the woman Marin had protected, died 2 weeks after the wedding, and Marin went to the funeral, and she held that woman's hand at the end and never once told her the truth. And the woman went peacefully believing her son was a good man who'd simply fallen in love with someone new. I drove Marin home from that funeral. She cried the whole way, and I let her, and I didn't say a single comforting word, because some griefs aren't meant to be talked smaller. I just kept my hand on hers on the gear shift and let it be as big as it was. That was the night I knew. I proposed the following autumn, a year and a few weeks after my brother's wedding. I didn't make a spectacle of it. I took her back to the same reception hall, which I'd rented for the evening. Empty, just the two of us, and a borrowed speaker playing the same old sweet song. I led her to the center of the floor, where we'd stood a year before. A year ago, I said, I walked across this room and lied to a cruel man, because my grandmother taught me you cross the whole room for the person nobody's dancing with. I got down on one knee. I've been trying to be the man she thought I was my whole life. The only time I ever actually managed it was the night I met you. So I'd like to keep crossing rooms for you, Marin Cole. For as long as I've got. Will you marry me? For real this time. She was laughing and crying at once. You're still doing things out of order, she said. You proposed to me before our first date. Is that a yes? It was a yes a year ago, she said, and pulled me up off the floor. I was just waiting for you to catch up. We were married that winter in the same hall, at the same back corner table where we'd met. We'd had them set the head table there, on purpose, in the leftover spot, The place they put the people they're afraid will cause a scene, my mother cried. My brother gave a toast about how the family had spent 2 years worrying about poor lonely Jonah, and how it turned out poor lonely Jonah had just been waiting to find the one other person stubborn enough to sit through a wedding alone with their chin up. Marin wore green, not white. She said she'd already done white once, for a man who didn't deserve it, and that green was the color she'd been wearing the night she met the one who did. We left an empty chair at our table that night, the way some families do. I told Marin it was for Nana. It was. But I'll tell you the truth. It was also for everyone who's ever sat at a back table, feeling like the leftover, the odd number, the one nobody walks across the room for. I wanted there to be a seat there. I wanted it to be seen. For a long time, I thought the story of how we met was a story about a lie. A quick, kind lie I told a cruel man at a wedding. The fiancé who wasn't. The rescue that wasn't a rescue. But that wasn't the story at all. The story is that two people got put at the back table because the world had quietly decided they were what's left over. The brother who'd given up his shot, the woman who'd been publicly thrown away, and the world was wrong about both of them. She wasn't the dumped one. She was the one with enough grace to take the blame and protect a dying stranger. I wasn't the one who couldn't find a wife. I was the one who'd been waiting for someone worth crossing a whole room for. We weren't leftovers. We'd just been waiting at the wrong tables, for the right person to sit down. My grandmother was right about almost everything, but especially about this. Any fool can be charming to the prettiest girl at the dance. You watch the one who crosses the whole room for the person nobody else will. I went to a wedding alone, sure that I was the thing everyone pitied. I left it walking beside a woman who'd been carrying more dignity, quietly, than the entire dance floor combined. And the truth is, I never rescued Marin. I just got up from the back table, walked across the room, and was lucky enough, for the rest of my life, to be the one she let sit down.